weird attitude of going around and telling everybody they have no empathy or sympathy for people who suffered abuse, which again, that is parasocial and weird. Personally, I'm rather indifferent to his character. I used to like Jax and was invested in any personal growth that he could have, but there really wasn't much payoff with being invested in him. With how the series came to a close, it seemed like Kane might be able to help those who've abstracted. So, like, as far as we know, Jax is not ready to come back, so he's going to stay like that for the foreseeable hypothetical future. I want to get your hopes up on any type of a continuation. The only new media tied to the Amazing Digital Circus that I'm aware of is the manga adaptation. And honestly, with how fans have been treating Goose, she's probably never going to touch this show ever again. So, I don't know, write your fan fictions or whatever. Anyway, I really want to talk about the Jax Defenders and how they've just been popping off lately, because ever since the release of the finale in theaters, they have genuinely been so insufferable, especially over on TikTok, which, by the way, I'm starting over on a new TikTok profile. My original one that I've had for years, I guess it's like permanently shadow banned, and I just got irritated with posting videos that got stuck at 10 views for weeks. I will be posting exclusive content if it's too long to be uploaded as a YouTube short, but not long enough to be turned into a full-length video, so link in the description. Before I continue any further, I would appreciate it if you would actually watch this video all the way through before leaving a comment, because a lot of people who get defensive when it comes to my videos, you do not bother completing the video and you end up calling out stuff that is debunked or proven to be in my video. But yeah, like, just to avoid that type of irritating headache, can you actually watch my video all the way through and listen? Also, something to keep in mind, this is coming from the perspective of somebody who's been in the villain fandom since I was a teenager. This kind of defensive behavior is literally nothing new to me. I've seen it so many times when it came to fangirls hyperfixating and wanting to defend their fictional villain crushes. Hell, one of the biggest diva drama that pretty much imploded the millennial elder Gen Z art commentary community before the pandemic was a fangirl not accepting criticism over her fictional hedgehog crush. You are awesome if you know what I'm talking about. This type of discourse that we're seeing around Jax is always something that's going to exist within fandom, which is why it's always important to speak up, especially nowadays where there's this moral panic when it comes to consuming fiction and liking certain fictional characters. You will be gaslit to high heavens with all sorts of mental gymnastics into believing you're a terrible person for saying this fictional character who did objectively bad things you would never condone in real life is a horrible person. Also, I want to make it very clear I intend to be nice when talking about this, because a lot of people who are participating in this discourse are young. They most likely have issues of never getting justice when it comes to what they've been through, and it's just something they need to work out and unpack in therapy. Alrighty, so let's get this video started. Jax for the Amazing Digital Circus is a character that has always been under controversy with the fan base since the release of the second episode, where you genuinely had fans believing his character was retconned. From the pilot, which is technically the first episode, a lot of people got the impression that he was just basically an edgier Bugs Bunny, but when it came to the second episode that had the Candy Kingdom adventure and introduced Gummy Goo, Jax had a lot more mean-spirited, like, way how he went about the whole thing. That was when fans got really upset with him, saying that he was being completely out of character and that he was retconned. Those opinions didn't stick around for long, as more episodes got released, and there definitely was a shift in opinion when it comes to Jax, and he started to get a lot more supporters. As the series got closer to an end, his supporters definitely got a lot more protective over Jax. And these supporters were ready to clap back at any form of criticism of his behavior and how he treated the characters, specifically the female members of the cast, even stepping into blatant misogyny themselves, wanting to blame the femme-presenting characters for how Jax behaved. Ever since the finale episode came out, they have gotten, like, in droves, taken this pseudo-intellectual route, trying to say anybody who hates him or just, wants to say he's a bad person because XYZ. You have Jax defenders saying, oh, you're just doing that because he's such a complex, morally great character, you don't understand him. See, this is why I assume a lot of these people are just young and they haven't, consumed a diverse range of media to explore what a complex character is. If you need an example of a complex character to do a character study so you can better grasp what is a complex character, look at Alucard from Hellsing. Alucard is considered a very deeply complex character because beneath his arrogant and sadistic exterior, he has his own internal conflict of self-hatred, a paradoxical respect for humanity, and a deep-seated death wish. While Alucard does indulge in fine pleasure in being a monster, at the same time, he does have regrets of throwing away his humanity out of fear and cowardice during his execution as Vlad the Impaler. He views his own centuries-long existence as an immoral monster like a tragic punishment. Alucard wants to die die, but when it comes to how he should, Alucard has a strong conviction that he needs to be put down by a human. Alucard's desire to be killed by a pure human is cathartic in a way to prove his own choice to become a monster was wrong, which is why he had such an emotional breakdown when Alexander Anderson threw away his own humanity to try to defeat him. Alucard deeply regrets his choice in becoming a monster, and he seeks the ultimate release that only a mortal enemy can provide him. There's a reason why he has such high respect and loyalty for the descendants of Abraham von Helsing, the human that nearly killed him. Just to say real quick, if you have not read Helsing or seen the more faithful anime adaptation Helsing Ultimate, you really should. It is a very good story. And when it comes to Alucard, he's not just a badass reimagined of Bram Stoker's Dracula. He's a heavily multifaceted character with so many layers to him. If you need other examples of complex characters, you have Joker from Identity 5. He is a tragic character that has become broken. Years of mockery and being mistreated, it's not a surprise that he became the faceless Moon River Killer. The reason why Joker is considered a very deeply tragic, complex character is because when you actually explore his lore, there is tragic intersections of abuse, unrequited love, and a severe inferiority complex he was pretty much conditioned into having. However, even though the transition from tragic mistreated circus performer into a deranged hunter has the line between victim and villain rather blurry, there's no excusing his actions. Yes, Joker has had it rough since a very young age, ever since his parents sold him to the Hullabaloo Circus because they did not want a deformed child. There's still no excusing him from eventually becoming a murderer. And don't get me wrong, Sergei absolutely deserved what happened to him, but Violetta did not deserve Joker luring her outside of the manor, cutting off her prosthesis, leaving her immobile, and left outside to die of hypothermia. Now, when it comes to Jax, he barely has two layers to him. He's basically BoJack Horseman if BoJack never faced the consequences of his actions. Jax is not morally gray or so complex that his haters do not understand him. I hate to break it to you, he's the stereotype of a bully. And that's not me trying to be cute or nothing. Jax is basically the cliche you hear from a teacher when you go to them for help about a bully that's been harassing you, and the teacher tells you to be their friend because they're probably going through something that's making them want to harass you. Jax is literally the stereotype of a bully that has emotional problems and is taking it out on those around him. And his defenders are like, as my best friend put it, they're like male-centered pick-me girls that want to go to bat for him because, aw, my boo-boo bunny boy has hurt feelings. Which just makes this weird discourse, like, pretty ironic because you have his fans and defenders feeling entitled for you to show empathy for Jax because he has trauma, when Jax himself cannot show empathy to the people he is actively traumatizing. And it's not like Jax is not aware that he's hurting them. His defenders always say that his haters have this mindset that he's a soulless monster when that's not the case. There are moments in the show where it seems like he does like feel another character's pain or he does have some remorse when it comes to how he's treating them, but he just doubles down his effort and that's what makes him so irritating. And speaking of Jax being a stereotype, in episode 9 when Pomni goes into his abstracted form, we see from Jax's perspective on a lot of things, including how he views the other members of the circus. For example, Jax believes that Gangle is into him and likes it when he is mean to her. That makes his line in the Stargazing Adventure in episode 5 very literal. He wasn't just being a smartass to Ragatha. Gangle is constantly abused by Jax, and since he thinks she likes it and that she is into it, it's basically sexual harassment. And the idea that Jax is basically sexually harassing Gangle, that is backed up when there are two lines in the show where he threatens to divulge some really embarrassing information involving figurines. And if you count their dialogue and the voting videos canon, he threatened to show everybody her little blue sketchbook. Going off the theme of the blackmail and Jax calling her an embarrassing little freak, the little blue sketchbook must be where she's drawing her porn. Threatening to share sexually embarrassing information about somebody to try to get them to do what you want is sexual harassment, and it's really fucked up that Jax thinks it's acceptable to do that because Jax believes the person he is doing that to likes him and enjoys being humiliated by him. It just makes his submissive and agreeable line from episode 2 even more disgusting. And what's really wild is that you have Jax defenders come up with the most out-of-pocket reasons for why Gangle is at fault for the abusive relationship dynamic that she's trapped in with Jax. For example, they want to be completely ageist, saying it's hard to feel sorry for her or see her as a victim of abuse because she's older than Jax. Gangle is 26, Jax is 22. That is a 4-year age gap. And if you believe a younger adult can never abuse an older adult, you are full of shit. You generally have the mentality mentality that allows abuse to thrive under your own nose. If it's not that, they try to say, oh, well, she just needs to get away from him if she doesn't like being treated that way. Where is Gangle supposed to go? Jax has keys to everybody's room, so Gangle cannot just go hide in her room from him. She can't hide anywhere in the circus because if he wants to find her, he's going to find her. They're trapped in what's basically a digital hub world, and she has nowhere to escape from him. And there's the downplaying that he's not hurting her all that bad. In episode 6, when she's alone with Zubul, she's having a panic attack, anticipating that Jax is going to severely hurt her in retaliation for refusing to team up with him. If he wasn't hurting her that badly, like a lot of you want to claim that, she wouldn't be that scared of him, anticipating physical pain from him. And just to remind everybody, yes, they are capable of feeling pain. To continue with the topic of victim blaming Jax's victim, let's talk about Ribbit. Oh, this sweet angel or frog, all she did was be available for him to be vulnerable with. Jax defenders will blame Ribbit for Jax shutting her out, saying things like, well, it's her own fault, she should have never brought up doing something that you regret you can't fix. That is so stupid. Talk about not having any empathy. Ribbit clearly initiated this conversation with Jax because she felt very close to him. I mean, before they sat down on her bed, he said, I'm glad I was able to cheer you up. Ribbit must have been in a bit of a funky mood, and Jax is able to bring her out of it. In this moment, Ribbit wanted to open herself up emotionally and be vulnerable with Jax, and in turn, she encouraged him to find that safety and comfort with her. Ribbit trusted him, and she wanted Jax to trust her. But of course, you have a lot of people who defend Jax, trying to spin this into a negative, just like how Jax did when he was gaslighting Ribbit about what was going on between them in the Snowy Mountain scene. All she did was open up and try to be vulnerable with somebody she thought she had a close mutual connection with, and it backfired horribly on her because of Jax wanting to punish her. After Ribbit abstracted, he didn't think about how his actions affected her. He doubled down and continued that behavior onto the next person that offered to be available for him when he needed someone to talk to. We know what happened to Cosmo, and throughout the show, we see how cruel Jax is to Ragatha. If Pomni hadn't showed up, she might have abstracted if Pomni didn't change his focus. And it's not like Jax is ignorant to his own fault. He knows he's to blame for Ribbit and Cosmo abstracting. Why else would you think he got so offended when Pomni asked him if his behavior is like what causes people to abstract in the first place? He got extremely defensive and angry, and that's strictly because of guilt. He knows he's at fault for what happened to Ribbit, and he also knows he's also at fault for Cosmo abstracting. Now, in regards to Ragatha, let's be honest. Ragatha abstracting was something a lot of Jax defenders were counting on. They really grew to hate her during the softball adventure because, God forbid, she had enough and finally lets her emotions out after Jax constantly mistreated her. But it seems like Jax is the only person that's allowed to be mean in the show because he has trauma, which is why Jax defenders will commonly want to say that his critics are heartless for not liking him because they are severely lacking in the empathy department. Jax defenders seriously need to stop using empathy and sympathy like they know the definition of those words. The definition of having empathy is to understand and share the feelings of another. The definition of having sympathy is having feelings of pity or sorrow for someone else's misfortune. Yes, Jax has been through trauma, but guess what? Ragatha has trauma too. Just like Jax, she was also emotionally and verbally abused by her mother. And do the knives mean anything? Ragatha was probably held at knife point by her mom at some point trying to regain control over Ragatha. However, it's very clear in which version of monthly abuse is clearly favored in the fandom. This is why Jax defenders using the word sympathy and empathy should just be seen as manipulative buzzwords because it clearly is. Because, like, how can they not have sympathy or empathy for the other characters in the circus who are also coping with being stuck there forever? But the fact is that they're playing clear favoritism on who deserves their empathy or sympathy. It just shows, like, their empathy and sympathy is just clearly just performative, strictly reserved for the people that they favor. Ragatha has the same trauma of being abused by a maternal figure, but she's never cruel to anybody because of it. Now, before anybody gets it twisted, because I know you're going to try, I'm not saying there's such a thing as a perfect victim. There's no such thing as a perfect victim, but there is such thing as a victim that's a shitty person. This is a very hard concept, especially Jax defenders, but this is something you need to understand. There is no amount of pain or trauma that remove the stigma of you being a horrible person when you are actively going out of your way to hurt other people. Emotional trauma, familial trauma, sexual trauma, it does not matter what you've been through. If you are making the conscious, calculated choice to go out of your way just to be needlessly cruel and traumatize other people, if you are hurting other people with no attempt to change, in fact, you double down and redouble your effort to hurt people, that stigma that you are a terrible person has every right to manifest. It's not that people who criticize Jax don't sympathize with him or are lacking in empathy. We just just don't over infantilize victims and act like it's impossible for them to hurt other people once they become an abuser. And this branches into an interesting topic of how people will treat fictional characters like real life people, but will treat real life people like fictional characters. If Jackson's behavior is demonstrated by any real life person on the internet that was canceled, nobody would like that person at all. Nobody would bring up their trauma to get them to stop being mean. More often than not, they would come to these real